When children first start comparing the sizes of numbers, they'll just be using one-digit numbers, which we looked at in a different video. In this video, we'll look at how to compare two-digit numbers, which is something that comes in from year 2 and above, although there's no reason why children can't do this earlier if they're familiar with the numbers. By using a number line outside or a big 100 square drawn on a patio, children can practice going up and down it, going greater than, less than to compare two numbers. So you can tailor it to the numbers they're using. For example, you might get them to stand on 32 and say, find a number that is 3 more, 1, 2, 3. Or you might get them to stand on 41 and ask them to jump to a number that is 5 less. So they'd be counting, and then once they'd found it, they would jump to it. You can do all sorts of things, and you can make your number line as big or as small as suits your child. Dice can be used in lots of games, and to compare two-digit numbers, this is a game that you could try, but you might be able to come up with your own games as well. So each player would roll the dice, they write their number, and then when the next person goes, if they've scored a higher number, or this time it's 12, then they would score a point. No point if they don't, but you could give a bonus point if the child can tell you by how much more or how much greater one of them is. So if this child could say 42 is 30 greater than 12, then they can get a bonus point. Once children are starting to use money, you can use coins to create different amounts of money for toys so that you can compare them. It's combining the skills of money with the comparing skills. So you could give two toys different amounts of money and see who's got the most. So same language, who's got the most, the least, how much more does so-and-so have, etc. And you can then also see if your child can make the two amounts equal by removing or adding coins to each pile. Once children have got the hang of comparing numbers, they can start to do it using place value, which is an important skill which they'll be using at school an awful lot. You might remember it from school yourself if you did it, but it involves a table where you see what each digit is worth. So you have the ones column and the tens column. So for the number 61, it's got 6 lots of 10 and just one little 1. They can then look at these numbers and compare the size. If they know that the tens are the same, we know that there are 3 more ones. So 64 is 3 greater than 61. You could then do it with the tens column changing. So you might have 34 and say, how much greater or smaller is 34 than 24? And the child would think, well, the ones column is the same, so that's not changing, but there's 1 fewer 10 in the tens column. So they would say it's 10 fewer to get to 24. And once they're proficient at one column at a time, you can do both columns at once. So then children might look at a number like this and say, I know that 38 is greater than 17, but how much greater? And they'd say, well, it's 1 1 greater, and it is 2 tens greater. And then they could write that in. So they could say it's got 1 more 1, it's got 2 more tens, so it is 21 greater.